The problem is the type of the value we're using here. Current result in the end is a number, right? We start with 0 here. Now what we add to current result here, however, and that's something you just gotta know, which is why I tell you, is a string. Because I'm getting this from this user input, and even though I entered a number here, and even though this user input actually even is of type number here in the HTML code, whatever you get from a user, from an HTML input in your JavaScript code will always be a string. Just something you can memorize. An input element, if you read its value, will give you a string. That's how JavaScript in the browser works. It doesn't try to be smart and check whether that should be a number or not. It doesn't make any assumptions. It just gives you a string, text. And therefore, what happens here is that we have a number and we have some text. And now JavaScript is it has a problem because we're trying to combine a string and a number. And how would it do that? Well, we saw how it does that earlier when we built this calculation description. There, we also combined text with a number because the default result we used there was just a number. And JavaScript concatenated that to one long string. And it's the same here. It got a number and a string. Instead of converting both to a number and doing a calculation, it does the safer thing because it doesn't know whether what you entered here as a string could be treated as a number or not. And it therefore simply converts it to a string and concatenates it to a string. And that's what we see here. We started with an initial value of 0. It concatenated 5. Then we had 0, 5. It added 10. So this is now that one long string which we got. And again, it does so because it doesn't know whether what you entered here can be used as a number or whether it just is some character which it can't use as a number. Therefore, the default is that it builds a string here. Now, of course, we want to build a number here, however. And we know that whatever the user enters here should be a number so that it can be used in mathematical equations. Now, how can we convert this value to a number then to tell JavaScript that we have a number and it should therefore do a mathematical calculation instead of string concatenation? To convert this to a number, you have a function built into the browser or built into JavaScript, a bit like the alert function we used earlier, which is called parse int. You also have parse float. The difference is that parse int will try to parse some text, so a string, as a number without decimal places. And parse float will do the same with decimal places. So with parse float, if you entered 10 here, this will be parsed as 10.0. With parse int, if you entered 10.1 here, which actually this input doesn't allow, but if you would do that, it would give you 10. So parse int and parse float are functions built into JavaScript that will, in the end, take a string as an input, take a string as a parameter you pass in, and will then convert this text into a number. Now, of course, that can fail. If you had some text here, like hi, which again, I can't enter here because this is configured to take a number, but if you would have hi here, parseInt would actually, of course, not be able to convert this to a number. Instead, it would convert it to a special value, which I'll show you later. For now, we know we get valid numbers and therefore we'll be able to parse it. I also only work with non-decimal numbers here, so only with integers as it's called, so numbers without decimal places, and therefore parseInt will work. So now if I save this, we're doing a calculation here with a number and the number, and hence if we reload and I enter 10 here and I then click plus, we see 10 here. And this is now not 0, 10, so not some concatenated string. Instead, if I enter a 5 and I click plus again, I see 15. So this is now a real number. Now, instead of parseInt, you can also use a plus here, by the way, even without parentheses. So we have a plus here, that's the operator. Another plus in front of the string will then also convert the string to a number. So that's the shorter form of doing that conversion. And it's up to you whether you prefer the plus or parseInt. ParseInt and parseFloat is of course more explicit about what it's doing. The plus here is easy to overlook. And if you know I want to have a non-decimal number, or I absolutely need a decimal place, well then parseInt gives you that extra control. The plus will just give you the best fitting number. So if it's a number without decimal places, it will keep that. If it's a number with decimal places, it will keep that as well. So parseInt and parsefloat also allows you to be more specific about which kind of number you want. Now, if you ever would want to convert a number to a string, you could do this as well by adding dot to string. That's another built-in function tied to the number here, which converts this number to a string. This, however, is definitely used in less cases, I'd say, because more often you need to convert a string value to a number to use it in a calculation than the opposite way around, because as you saw earlier, the default of JavaScript was to concatenate two strings. So we had that default behavior of treating this here, or using this number here, in a string anyways. So with that out of the way, we're doing that conversion correctly, and the add function is working therefore. Now we can still improve this function a little bit, or improve this overall code, and also of course improve the output we're outputting here.